Version of my journal. I'm Steffanie Rivers. Come on in, kings and queens, and welcome to the conversation. Come on in, kings and queens. Welcome to the conversation. I'm Steffanie Rivers, and you're watching my journal. I am broadcasting, tri-casting, multicasting on several platforms on YouTube and Facebook Live and LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. So from whatever platform you're watching, I want to welcome you to the conversation. If you are one of my new subscribers, I want to thank you for subscribing. And if you are returning, welcome back. I'm putting in the link so that if you want to come on live and give some feedback, you're welcome to do that, or you can chat with me with your fingers if you like. So welcome to the conversation. I always like to start with some little background noise to start off with. But today we are talking about a Houston man who was ambushed as he got into his vehicle, and he was shot and killed by two men who claimed that they were bounty hunters. That man is 31-year-old Walter Hutchins. He's a new father. And he was a new father and living in the Houston area. That's a picture of Walter Hutchins. So that's the subject that we're going to be talking about today. The two men who ambushed Hutchins as he got into his car on the night of February 23rd around 11:30 p.m. They didn't wear uniforms that could have helped to identify them as working bounty hunters. They were in unmarked vehicles when they rolled up behind Hutchins' car and tried to block him from leaving the scene. And we don't know if they wore badges or what these bounty hunters said to Hutchins in the 5 seconds that passed between when they rolled up to the scene and jumped out of their cars, weapons drawn, and the time that they shot him. Not a lot can be clarified in 5 seconds. I'm sure we all can agree. So this is a scene that's reminiscent of what happened to Amir Locke in Minneapolis when cops entered the apartment where he was asleep in possession of a weapon that he legally was in possession of. And within seconds, 5 or 6 seconds, no more than 10, they shot and killed him. This also reminds me of Andrew Brown in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, when cops stormed his home and caught him in the driveway and shot him in the back of the head, and have since been exonerated of their actions when they claimed that he shot at them or he was using a deadly weapon by trying to get away. A lot of cops have a shoot first and ask questions later mentality, and they will lie about whatever the situation is just to get away with what they're doing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. These guys who shot Hutchins, they claim to be bounty hunters. They are wannabe cops, and they want the authority to run up on people, assault them, in this case, execute them without punishment. And judging from the reaction from the Houston law enforcement does not plan to charge these bounty hunters for their actions. So my question to you is, should bounty hunters be treated like cops? Should they have the cop status in the community? That's what we're going to talk about today, right after this. Hi, I'm Steffanie Rivers, and I want justice for Breonna Taylor because the police officers involved showed reckless disregard for her life and the lives of her neighbors. Revive her. So you're saying she essentially died on the floor right there?
The second that she got shot, she was.
Family, did the city of Birmingham, did anybody say, did the church, did anybody say there's more to? Hello, and welcome to the video version of my journal. I'm Steffanie Rivers. Welcome to the conversation, kings and queens. This is what we're talking about. Should bounty hunters be treated as cops? We're asking that question because 31-year-old Walter Hutchins was shot and killed by bounty hunters in Houston, Texas on February 13th, the night of February 23rd, the night of February 23rd. And the circumstances are questionable as to how things went down. So that's why we're talking about this. Now, if you know anybody who has been arrested, you know there's a process to getting released from jail. A part of the process includes having a bond hearing. That means going before a judge, explaining what the charges are, and that process. The shorthand version of getting released from jail goes like this. If you get arrested, you can get released one of two ways. One is to get released on your own recognizance, which means you are upstanding citizen. They just want you to sign some papers saying that you agree that you will come back to the court on your trial date. That's one way. Or you can get released by having to pay bail, which is a certain amount of money that the judge says that you need to pay as a promise, departing with money that says you will show back up. If the judge sets a bail, that's usually the defendant has to pay a portion of the bail, normally 10%, but we won't get into percentages. The judge sets the bail, the defendant has to pay a certain amount of that bail to get released. But if the person doesn't have the cash to pay the amount needed, the defendant can go to a bail bondsman who fronts the money or loans the money to the defendant and takes it to the court on behalf of the defendant in exchange for the defendant agreeing to repay the money to the bail bondsman and showing up to trial on that date. So some people put up a deed to their property, or it could be a house, it could be a car, whatever collateral or a certain amount of cash that you pay to the bail bonds company that says, I'm good for this, and here's my collateral. So if the defendant doesn't show up to court when he or she is supposed to, the bail bondsman could try to take ownership of the property or keep the cash that was used for collateral. So that usually keeps people from jumping bail. So that's what that is. Now, then if the bail bondsman, now he's on the hook, he or she is on the hook for, they put their name on the line, like they referred your reference. They put their name on the line to say, I am standing in for this person. I agree. We'll keep them. They'll come back to court, this, that, and the third. So bounty hunters are hired by bail bonds companies to do the dirty work for catching people who don't show up to court when they're supposed to. Those bail bonds, those bounty hunters are freelance wannabe cops, basically. They can use handcuffs and weapons, and they are not state or federal agents, so they can't wear uniforms or that say they're state or federal agent. They can't have badges that say they're state or federal agent, but they're given the leeway to act as if they are law enforcement. But how much is too much? So when the defendant signs the bail bond contract saying, I'm going to promise to show back up, that person agrees to show up in court or forfeit the money or the loan money, the collateral that they put up. So apparently Hutchins, according to the reports, Walter Hutchins, the person who was shot and killed, let's show you his picture again. He had, according to reports, he had about 4 outstanding warrants on him. And I bring that up just to give you the backstory of why there were bounty hunters on the scene or involved in this process. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at a video that shows us what happened when bounty hunters came onto the scene to try to apprehend Walter Hutchins. So give me a second. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share my screen of the video of that night. And this video comes from the Instagram page of Jay Prince. He's a well-known producer in the Houston area. And so I want to give him credit for the video. We're going to watch it. It's only a few minutes. So I'm going to make sure that I have it on. I do. And let's take a look at this video. So that is Walter Hutchinson walking to his vehicle. You can see it's February 23rd around 10:31 that night. Those are the unmarked vehicles rolling up, jumping out, guns drawn. Now, I'm going to try to replay it again. So you saw, we probably were focused on the vehicles, the unmarked vehicles. Now we're going to play it again, and we're going to focus on Walter Hutchins when he got into the vehicle. I'm going to play it again. So he's walking out to the vehicle. And he's sitting in the vehicle. And so look to the left, you can see Walter sitting in the vehicle and he's leaning over. Now, I don't see at any point where anybody had a chance to say, hey, we're bail bondsmen. Hey, put your hands up. Hey, anything. And so I don't know how you would react, family, in this situation, but not knowing who these people are running up on you, I don't know if he saw the guns or he just saw people running up on him. But your reaction probably is going to be to defend yourself, however you want to defend yourself. And so that is the question that we are dealing with today, because it was around 10:30 at night, and it could have been a carjacking. It could have been a robbery attempt. Hutchins, there's not much he could have known within 5 seconds, and that's about the amount of time that it took for all this to go down. So the question becomes, what was said in that 5 seconds and done in that 5 seconds that would justify anybody, let alone bounty hunters, showing up and shooting and killing someone? The fact that we know Walter Hutchins' criminal background, while the identities of these bounty hunters remains a mystery, is another way the dead man's character gets assassinated and the killers get to hide under anonymity. Now, I did a previous video just last week, a video column about this issue, and it was called "Should Killer Cops Get to Hide Their Identity?" And it was because of Marsy's law in some states. There's a law called Marsy's law. It's in some states that allow, if your state adopts Marsy's law, it allows for anybody in a situation whereby they are involved in a shooting to claim victim status and not have their names be broadcast in news related information. And so it was done to help private citizens to, in case they were involved in a shooting or some type of incident, they don't want their names broadcast because they're trying to be safe, or they don't want to be taunted by the people who put them in that position to begin with, a defendant, if you will. They don't want that attention, so they choose not to be named. So cops now have started to take on the victim role in situations where they shoot and kill people, especially unjustified shootings where there are a lot of questions about how it happened. Some states have adopted Marsy's law, allowing law enforcement to take on the Marcy law victim role, and some states have not. In Texas, there is no Marsy's law that has been enacted, but because bounty hunters are not state or federal affiliated law enforcement, they are private citizens acting as wannabe cops, then they have chosen to remain anonymous. And that is what we're dealing with right now. So Fearless Bail Bonds is the name of the company that hired these two bail bonds people to try to apprehend Walter Hutchins. So I'm going to put up their information because somebody needs to be held accountable. And if it can't be the two people because they're hiding behind anonymity, then let's make it the business of Fearless Bail Bonds in Houston, Texas. So here's their information. Let's call Fearless Bail Bonds. Let's let them know that we don't like the way it went down with Walter Hutchins and how the bail bonds people that they hired are now essentially going out here shooting and killing people, giving people 5 seconds to respond, and lying about it. And I say lying about it because in the report to police officers, the bail bondsman said one thing, but the video showed something else. Bounty hunters told cops that they identified themselves when they arrived at the scene where Hutchins was, and that Hutchins was shot at first before that Hutchins shot at them first before they returned fire, killing him. Now that's what they told police. But the video that I just showed you doesn't show all that could have happened in 5 seconds. There's no way that they got out, guns drawn, said who they were, and he had time to respond, and they started shooting. In fact, the video that we just showed, which is the only video that was there, showed that Hutchins' back was to at least one of the people who came on his driver's side. His back was to him. So how would that person know whether what Hutchins was doing or not doing, because his back was to him? So that's what we're dealing with. And that's why I say that they are lying. And that we need to know who these people are. And we might never know who they are unless they are charged with a crime. But we already know that the Houston law enforcement in that area, I don't know if it was the sheriff's department or the police department, I don't know, but they have already come out and stated that whatever their findings are, they're going to turn it over to the district attorney and let the district attorney decide whether whether that department wants to file charges. So they're already falling back. Now, we know if it was something else, if it was one of us out here shooting and killing folk, we'd have been arrested. We would have been in jail awaiting our bond hearing by now. But now they want to fall back. And that lets you know that crooked ass cops and wannabe cops, they hang together, and that's what's going on. So even if Hutchins had warrants, which doesn't make him guilty of anything that he was accused of, that still doesn't say to me that it's okay to ambush a person, run up on him in the middle of the night with guns drawn. Then when he makes a move to defend himself, or when he makes a move to hide. We don't know what he was doing. But when he makes a move to, it's just an automatic response. When people run up on you, you just don't sit there and let it happen. You do something. So when he makes a move to do whatever he was doing, that doesn't mean that you get to execute him and then claim cop want to be status. That's not how it should work. Um, Here's what is happening, and I want to get ready because I want to show you that again, but I will just keep that up. Uh, Here's what's happening in America and probably around the world. The danger in this is that villainizing black people to justify treating them with intolerance is the latest disenfranchisement campaign against black people in America. And that's what's really going on. That's how I'm seeing what's really going on. They want to get you to agree. They want all of us to agree that if a person has a criminal past or at least has been charged with a crime, then they are not worthy of the same consideration as those who are law abiding citizens. And that's not true. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But that's a notion, that's a practice that seems to be going by the wayside with every passing year, with every passing incident. It's like they put out the dead person's criminal background, like, oh well, they were a criminal anyway, so we shouldn't worry about them. But how many people do we know who have been accused of crimes and they didn't do it, just so they can get you hemmed up? They want you to believe that innocent until proven guilty doesn't exist for black people. That's one thing. And then once they get you to agree on that, then they go about categorizing all black people as criminals. Therefore, all black people don't deserve to be treated any other way than with intolerance and disdain. That's the next step in this whole campaign. So we've heard lots of news reports about crooked cops who try to burden black people with all kinds of frivolous charges so they have criminal records, whether that be because when you have a record, there are some rights that you can no longer exercise, whether that's exercising the right to vote, whether that's exercising the right to legally carry a firearm, or whether that's holding a good job or living in a certain neighborhood or getting the basic utilities in your name. Because these days there are when you have a negative criminal background history report, when you have a negative or low credit report, your potential employer can look at your background and decide to not hire you. Or if you are looking to get an apartment in a certain area, or trying to get a loan for a house or any other thing, then the people who are checking on you, they can check your background status, they can check your credit. And if your credit is below a certain amount, if you have what they consider to be a negative criminal background history, they can deny you these to live in that area. They can deny you. They can't necessarily deny you. They could deny you a loan. But if they say, okay, well, we understand there are extenuating circumstances, so we're just going to charge you a higher interest rate. That's what they do. Or we're going to charge you, instead of charge you a $500 deposit, you got to pay $1,500 deposit. They try. And so you wonder where all your money is going. You wonder why can't I get ahead? It's because the system is designed to put obstacles in front of you. And if you get caught up in that system, then there is really no getting out of that system. And that is like a dominoes effect. And that is what's going on. So they're proving themselves to be, these bounty hunters are proving that they can be just as crooked as some of these cops. And cops said that have already said they are planning to investigate. We know how that's going to go. And then if they decide that, yeah, they were wrong, they should not have, they acted outside of their legal jurisdiction of how they did their job as bounty hunters, then they could be charged. They're not going to go charge them. They're going to go hand the stuff over to the DA. That means they're afraid. That means they're sticking together. That means these crooked cops and wannabe cops are sticking together. And just like crooked cops and wannabe cops stick together, we as Black and brown people in America, we have to stick together and defend each other, especially when we see that it is a setup. Okay. So yes, Hutchins should have shown up for his court dates if he didn't. And yes, if he was guilty of what they said he was charged with, he should not have done those things. But being guilty or innocent, whether or not you're guilty or innocent, there seems to be this energy in America that says a Black person's life is not worth recognizing, that people who look like me are expendable. And I, for one, am going to continue to speak out about it. So that's why, if you agree with me or you know anyone in the Houston area, you should have them to call Fearless Bail Bonds, and that's the number is 713-862-8888, and they're on North Main Street, Suite B in Houston. If you find yourself needing a bail bonds person or a company, don't use them. Go to somebody else, and be sure to ask them. Now, if this thing goes to where, do you hire bounty hunters? What is the rules that that they have to abide by according to being hired by you? Ask these questions. Don't just take anybody's word for it that they're going to do things a certain way. You have to ask questions, and that's why I want you to call Fearless Bail Bonds and let them know that um, the way they handle their the bail bonds, the bounty hunters that they hired, the way they handled Walter Hutchins' situation, rolling up on him at night. And I hear they waited about 5 or 6 hours. They knew he was in a certain location and waited 5 or 6 hours before they actually before he came out, when they had all the time in the world to call law enforcement to arrest him. Now, maybe they only get paid because if they bring him in, but I'm sure shooting and killing people is not a part of the agreement. And if it is, Fearless Bail Bonds, they need to be run out of business, as well as held accountable for how things were done in the situation with Walter Hutchins. And so that's our conversation. I just want, there's always something that needs to be talked about. And I just want to do my best to bring attention to these matters, because it doesn't really matter if you are innocent or guilty. There's a process that should happen. And they didn't follow that process. And you might find yourself saying, well, he must have been guilty of something, but that doesn't mean that he should be shot and killed in the middle of the night within 5 seconds. That certainly you don't think that. And so that's why we need to stay on task and not let people try to divide us and try to make us think one set of Black people is better or worse than any other set of Black people, because in the end, they're going to treat you the same way, whether you're innocent or guilty. So we need to come together and make sure that our value, that our worth, that our lives are seen as important and we are respected, and that our family members don't feel like they can't make a move without being accosted, being assaulted, being shot in the street. And that's all I have. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thanks, and you have a super day.